Hey, before we get started, I just want to let you guys know about my comic Dark Phantom. Issues 1 through 5 are available now on Comixology and Gumroad, with issue 6 coming soon. We've worked really hard on it, and it would mean a lot to me if you would check it out. Thanks, and let's get on with the video. Run. You know what? Actually, why don't you just stay right there? That's fine. Hey, welcome to Class Act Media. I'm Jack, and Doctor Who has finally entered the modern age. Let's take a look at the season that kicked off the show's renaissance. In 2005, after around 20 years of being off the air, except for that, Doctor Who came back as a full-fledged series again under the guidance of showrunner Russell T Davies, with Christopher Eccleston now in the role as the Doctor. Now, I'm just going to start by announcing my bias. Eccleston was my first Doctor, and he's my favorite. I remember back in the day I got introduced to Doctor Who through my brother, who started watching at the beginning of the new series. I was curious, so I started watching too, and it instantly clicked with me. I was very easily scared as a kid, and didn't really like watching any remotely scary media, but this is the first time I ever remember being scared by something and liking it. I became very attached to the universe, the characters, the creativity, and while my brother eventually stopped watching the show after a bit, I did not. So, while the previous episodes in this series have been me going back and seeing an age of Doctor Who that came before my time and I thus had very little experience with, from here on out we'll be looking at my Doctor Who, the stuff I grew up with and that caused me to fall in love with the show in the first place. Okay, sentimental part over, let's talk about the Doctor. The first thing I want to touch on is the wardrobe they chose for Eccleston's Doctor. I like it a lot, and I think it's a good compromise between what classic Doctor Who was like and modern sensibilities. It's simple. Leather jacket, v-neck shirt, jeans. He's got a distinct style, just like every other Doctor before him, but the look is casual so as not to scare off new viewers. I love the wardrobes of classic Doctors, but I think if Eccleston had rolled onto the scene wearing anything even remotely close to what Jon Pertwee or Tom Baker wore, new audiences would have tuned out almost immediately. And then there was the other thing that simplified lore for new viewers. I've mentioned this in the last couple of videos, but the thing that separates classic Doctor Who from modern Doctor Who was the Time War. A massive conflict between the Time Lords and Daleks that ended with the Doctor wiping them all out. So in the classic series he was a Time Lord, and now in the reboot he's the last Time Lord. This not only served to return a level of mystique to the Time Lords that had been missing for years at that point, since now we could only find out about them through the Doctor's stories, but it also served as the basis for Nine's characterization. You could tell he was trying and struggling to get back to being the Doctor he was before the Time War. Eccleston brought a great mix of alien oddness and human emotion that every Doctor needs, just dialed up and channeled in a new direction. Most of the time he kept up that quirky, sarcastic energy we're used to, but every so often something would set him off and you realize that it's mostly just a facade holding up a severely broken man. The Ninth Doctor's run is mainly about him trying to reconnect with what it means to be the Doctor, and to pull off something like that you have to pair him up with a very good companion. Thankfully, that's what we got with Rose Tyler. Rose's introduction in the show's pilot episode, which, funnily enough, is titled Rose, what a strange coincidence, I wonder if anyone's noticed that, is really a testament to how good Russell T Davies is at writing characters. In just a few short minutes, and without barely a line of dialogue, we get a good look at her life, her family, her friends, and her job. You know, she was just an ordinary person, the exact type of person the Doctor normally connects with. They made a good team. Billie Piper and Christopher Eccleston had great chemistry. Plus, I liked that they used Rose's background as a minimum wage worker to have her connect with people on their travels who normally weren't used to being connected with. It gave us some nice grounded moments as the Doctor buzzed around at 100 miles a minute trying to beat the monster of the week. Yes, I think Rose was a great companion. I only wish they hadn't gone the romantic route with her relationship with the Doctor. For the entire classic series run, the Doctor's relationships with his companions were always strictly platonic. The only time romance was even implied was with Romana, and even then, like I said, it was only vaguely implied. No, the TV movie doesn't count, it was weird there too. Now, I feel like any romantic relationship that the Doctor might have with a human would be icky since he's over 900 years old, but Rose was 19. Suddenly the TARDIS is starting to look a little bit like Jeffrey Epstein's jet. They even lampshade how creepy the age gap is.
You're 900 years old.
Yeah.
My mum was right, that is one hell of an age gap. Have you guys seen Lolita? This is just like that, but fine.
Oh well, I'm not trying to go on some self-righteous rant here. I do really like Rose as a companion. I just found the whole romance angle to be unsettling. As a contrast, one of my favorite things about Rose was how the show focused on her family and her life outside the TARDIS. I don't think that's something Doctor Who ever really dived into ever before this. We really got to know Rose's boyfriend, Mickey, and her mother, Jackie. This was an angle that Doctor Who had never explored before. When someone goes off running in the TARDIS with the Doctor, flying around in time and space, what effect does that have on the people they leave behind on Earth? Jackie responds like any mother would. Jackie's great. The Doctor may see her as stupid, but she's completely no nonsense and the only one willing to put him in his place. And oh my god, I love Mickey too. He starts the season as a sniveling coward, but over the course of just a few episodes we see him fleshed out into a much stronger character. He still cares about Rose and knows that traveling with the Doctor makes her happy, but he just can't stand sitting around waiting for her, never knowing when or if she'll come back. It makes for some great conflict every time he pops back up. As for other companions, we also got Captain Jack Harkness. Great name. Part of me wonders if he was a parody of what the Doctor would have been like if he had been created in America. Jack was a time-traveling con man with a cool, sleek-looking ship, loved a good martini, and flirted with every person he met. Jack's fun, I like him a lot, and as a third member to the TARDIS team he fit right in and added a witty, kinda macho energy to it. Oh, and should I mention Adam? He was only in like 2 episodes, but then again Eccleston's run only lasted for 1 season, so I guess I'll count him. Adam was certainly there, and then the Doctor kicked him out because he got a surgery to make his brain open up, and the Doctor famously hates it when brains are opened up, so he kicked him out. Fun fact, Adam actually shows back up in a comic called Prisoners of Time where he's turned into a full-on supervillain and has vowed revenge on the Doctor, so that's fun. I don't have any neutral colored shirts, so I'm just wearing one of my graphic tees backwards. This is a very professional production. In classic Doctor Who, apart from some exceptions like The Key to Time and Trial of a Time Lord, each season was pretty much a series of one-and-done adventures, with the previous one not really affecting the next one all that much. But since this reboot was meant to be Doctor Who for a modern audience, this season felt much more internally coherent than previous ones. It still kept the Monster of the Week, one-and-done adventure format. I don't think Doctor Who will ever stop doing that, but each episode featured many recurring characters, locations, and villains. It really felt like Davies was putting his own creative stamp on Doctor Who, rather than just continuing what had come before. Visually, I think one of the biggest things I noticed about the Eccleston era is that it looks dirty, and I mean that in a good way. The sets do look kinda cheap, which, you know, that's to be expected, and in most cases it's used to their advantage. Look at Mickey's apartment, for instance. Doesn't this dinky little dirty 2-room place look exactly like the kind of apartment a broke guy in his early 20s would have? It makes the world as a whole feel very lived in. The one set I'm kinda torn on is this new TARDIS interior. Like, it looks fine. I guess I'm just not entirely sure what they're going for with this look. It kinda looks like the inside of some sort of organism, which I guess works if they were trying to emphasize the whole "the TARDIS is a living thing" angle. I don't dislike it, but I definitely prefer the sleeker, more techie designs that came before and after this one. Maybe it's the lighting that throws me off. It's constantly got this ugly looking greenish blue light covering everything. Okay, one more thing I just thought was funny. Since this is a modern take on Doctor Who, we got characters saying things we'd never hear in the classic series.
It's better to die than live like you, a bitchy trampoline.
Ha! Got him! Ha! Got him!
Okay, time to count down my top 5 Ninth Doctor stories, and honestly, that was pretty difficult. Even though he only had 13 episodes, they were all at least good, except for the long game. But eventually I was able to narrow it down to 5. Number 5, Boomtown. The Doctor finds the last surviving member of the Slitheen, an alien crime family that he had defeated a few episodes ago. After catching her, he now has to decide if he can return her to her home planet to face trial, knowing that doing so will result in her slow and agonizing death. Now, I know that this episode is kinda controversial, and I'll be the first to admit that, yeah, it's got a lot of problems. For one, Blonde, that's her name by the way, the villain's name is Blonde, would have a much better case for herself if she hadn't been actively planning to blow up the Earth at the beginning of the episode. And if you haven't seen this episode before and do want to watch it, just turn it off before the last 10 minutes. Just stop watching and make up your own ending, because I guarantee that whatever you come up with will be better than what actually happens. So with all these problems, why do I like this episode so much? Well, even though they dropped the ball at the conclusion, I think the question is a genuinely interesting one. The conversations between the Doctor and Blonde are very well written, and provide some insights on the Doctor's new moral code following the Time War. This is just a great episode as a whole when it comes to character writing. The team of the Doctor, Rose, and Jack is at its strongest here, but I think the best stuff comes from Mickey. This is where we get real insight into his character's conflict, and it presents Rose with a difficult moral choice as well. Can she really go running around the universe when she knows it's tearing Mickey up? It's a strange mixed bag of an episode, but in my opinion, the good outweighs the bad. Number 4, The End of the World. The second episode of the series, the Doctor takes Rose to a satellite millions of years in the future where the galaxy's rich and elite have come to watch as the sun expands and consumes the Earth. The first episode of the season took things relatively slow, set things on Earth with a relatively simple alien invasion story, introduced us to the Doctor, what he does, Rose, and the general tone of the show. This one, though, threw us right into the deep end with a strange new premise and bizarre new alien designs. I love how Rose is initially completely overwhelmed by all of it, and how the Doctor didn't even seem to consider that that might have been a possibility. He was just so excited to be traveling with someone again, he immediately took her to the most alien place he could think of. Weird, creative stories like this are Doctor Who's bread and butter, and I love how the reboot wasn't afraid to kick things off by saying, "Don't worry, we're gonna get weird." Number 3, Father's Day. Rose asks the Doctor to take her back in time to see her father, Pete, who died when she was just a baby. However, Rose ends up saving his life, interfering with her own timeline and summoning the Reapers, universal antibodies who show up to sterilize the wound whenever time is damaged. I love Eccleston's performance in this one. He's furious with Rose for being so reckless, but when he realizes that an easy solution to the problem would be to just let her dad die again, he doesn't tell anyone and instead works to find a solution where everyone can live. The actor playing Pete is also fantastic. When he realizes who Rose is, he immediately goes into dad mode to try to protect her. It's so heartwarming. This episode is just a really good examination of not just Rose, but Jackie too. We see what her relationship with Pete was really like compared to the stories she tells Rose about him later on. It's a really good testament to how much she does love him and how sometimes we can't truly appreciate what we have until it's gone. Number 2, The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances. The TARDIS lands in London during World War II, where a horrible plague that causes people's faces to change into gas masks is spreading, and a child walks the streets looking for his mommy. This is the first story ever written by Doctor Who's future showrunner Stephen Moffat, and the first horror-focused story of the reboot series. You really get a good look at Moffat's strengths as a writer here. He's very good at maintaining a creepy and horrific tone without it feeling too overbearing, and he knows when to sprinkle in comedic or hopeful moments without losing the tension. The image of the gas mask zombies is truly inspired. They're so simple, and I think that's why they still manage to stay creepy to this day. And yet, despite how dark it may seem, this story has one of the happiest and most optimistic endings of the season. The
Just this once! Everybody lives!
Scene has rightfully become iconic, as he's finally gotten a real, 100% unadulterated victory after all this time, when he absolutely needed it the most. I mean, I don't know what else to say, it's a classic for a reason. Number 1, Dalek. The Doctor and Rose find themselves in the underground bunker of Henry Van Staten, a billionaire who collects alien artifacts so he can repackage and sell them. There, the Doctor meets the prize of Van Staten's collection, the last living Dalek in the universe. Seeing the Doctor come face to face with his oldest enemy who he thought had been wiped out is just as good as you'd imagine. Seeing that even one Dalek survived the Time War brings all of his pain rushing to the surface, since if the Daleks weren't all wiped out, did he wipe out the Time Lords for no reason? For years at that point, the Daleks had been kind of treated like jokes, but this episode single-handedly makes them scary again. That's helped in great part by Nicholas Briggs's performance. He has quickly become the definitive Dalek voice for me and many other people. This Dalek has an actual personality again, rather than just being a one-note killing machine. Sure, it kinda steals some of its moments from Remembrance of the Daleks, but that's fine. Just watching the Doctor frantically try to convince people that the Dalek is dangerous, only to be proven right when it breaks free and begins mowing people down without a second thought, is one of the best ways they could have updated this classic villain for a modern audience. It's a near perfect episode that shows just how good these writers are at making people care about old Doctor Who concepts again. Unfortunately, Christopher Eccleston's run as the Doctor only lasted for one season. We don't know all the reasons for this, but we do know he was clashing with higher-ups at the BBC as well as struggling with some severe mental health problems at the time. Oh well, at least what we did get with him was great, and Big Finish recently announced that he's going to be coming back to record a series of Ninth Doctor audio dramas. Since my War Doctor video, I've dove headfirst into Big Finish fandom, and oh my god, they're great. They've got some serious talent over at Big Finish. Anyway, see you next time, guys, and before I go, I just want to let you know that you were fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And you know what? So was I.